This is Eddie Camden, and now we're going to see Melvin Gilliard from the Ultimate Fighter show in an MMA fight using the reference points for the mount position, the most dominant position in Gracie Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And we'll see those reference points against an opponent who's not as experienced on the ground. And now we'll see Melvin here in the blue trunks. He's attained the most dominant position in Gracie Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is going to be that top position. And the opponent on the bottom, who's not as experienced in ground grappling, is doing some of the things that we'd see someone do in a street fight that are incorrect to do to escape from the bottom position. Here we see the raising of the legs. Next, we're going to see a bridge, which is pretty typical, and he's going sideways. When we do escape from the bottom of the mount position, we want to drive the hips straight. So most, inexperienced people will drive sideways, trying to reverse this position. So we also see that here. And then finally, another, typical thing that someone who's inexperienced on the bottom would do is reaching up and grabbing around the waist. And we'll see why these things are, not effective from the bottom position here. Now Melvin, using the fundamental reference points that all the professional fighters at the top level use to maintain the mount position, again this dominant position, is able to prevent the opponent from escaping. And so what we're seeing here, the first reference point is going to be here. His feet are coming together and they're tucked underneath the opponent's hips. These act as an anchor to hold Melvin in the top position when the opponent on the bottom is lifting his hips. As his hips start to lift, the feet here are anchoring. Melvin's knees are open wide for a reference point, and this is going to give him left and right balance as the opponent is bridging towards his left. The next reference point that we see here is that Melvin's hands are out on the mat. They're wide and away from the opponent on the bottom so that the arms cannot be trapped, and that's going to keep Melvin from getting rolled by the opponent on the bottom. The next common fundamental reference point that we're seeing Melvin in the blue trunks using is he's very relaxed in the top position, which is allowing him to set up his strikes when he's ready. In addition, we're seeing that Melvin's positioned himself high in the mount position, meaning that he's moved himself away from his opponent's hips in the black trunks towards his opponent's head. And what this does a couple things for Melvin. It's going to maximize the length of his arms for striking, minimize the length of the opponent's arms on the bottom for striking, but in keeping away from his hips, when the opponent on the bottom lifts his hips up, he won't have any control over Melvin's body weight. And so Melvin here, as you can see, is going to be able to maximize that arm length as he strikes. The next position that we're going to see here is that Melvin's going to be throwing an elbow technique. And again, once you're in that top position, you're going to be able to strike your opponent, and he's not going to be able to effectively strike you. When the opponent on the bottom takes that elbow strike, we're going to see him here throw a strike of his own, but because he's in the bottom position, you see that this punch is landing ineffectively to Melvin's side and rather than to Melvin's head. So again, the opponent on top is able to strike the opponent's head on the bottom, while the opponent on the bottom has no way to strike the opponent on top. The next thing that we're going to see about the mount position in Gracie Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and one of the reasons it's so devastating, is because now gravity is working for Melvin in the top position, so his punches are being accelerated by gravity, and the gravity is working against his opponent on the bottom while he tries to throw strikes of his own. Absolutely devastating position to be in. And now we'll see the final reason that the mount position in Gracie Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is so absolutely devastating. Science has proven that an elite professional athlete in mixed martial arts striking from the top of the mounted position can generate approximately 2,000 pounds of pressure per square inch from the top of that mounted position. Now, this is happening because of the ground reactionary force being exerted from the ground as the opponent's head is stable, and the force coming down from the punch from the top position. So again, you see that ground reactionary force coming up and the force from the opponent's punch coming down. Now this is equivalent, 2,000 pounds per square inch is equivalent of standing still and being hit by a car traveling 30 miles per hour. Put this in the context of a street fight, and you can see why this would be absolutely destructive to someone on the bottom of that mountain position, especially if this is concrete or a hard surface. The equivalent of this standing up is going to be tying your partner's hands or your opponent's hands behind his back, tying him to a wall, and saying that the only way he can defend from the punch is moving his head left or right.